Dayıların dayısı.
Abilerin abisi be.
Nasılsın, iyi misin?
Sen de 2 sene önce yine bu sarı koltukta buluştuğumuzda
Anlatacağı konu da şu: düşük maliyetli küçük ekiplerle büyük proje yaratmak.
Sen şimdi hangisini savunacaksın onu söyle
Abi
bana.
bugün evet. Ben de tabii ki 2007'yi savunacağım.
Sen 2007'yi savundun. Shot fire! Shot fire!
Game Jam, Fall Jam sizin için bir Steam oyunu yayınlamak için temel olabilir.
İnanılmaz büyük bir fırsat yani bu hakikaten.
Artık herhalde PlayStation 6'yı görmeyeceğiz.
Şu anda 9 liraya çıktı. 9,5'a doğru gidiyor.
Gidiyor.
Yani ona da gider.
Kafa rahat. Güzel. Evet.
Yes. Welcome to the last session of Indieway December. And our last session, we are together. We are here with Kağan Kayak. And the title of the presentation is How HyperCasual Prepares You for Tomorrow. I would like to invite him now. Hello, welcome, Mr. Kağan Kayak. Hello, you can start if you're ready. Yes. Yes, let me share my screen. Okay, hello again. Welcome. And I would like to thank you very much for your time and the Saturday, the weekends. I will talk about how hyper-casual games prepares you for the future. As I said, we are a hyper-casual studio. Here, one of the most important aspects is that normally hyper-casual games is highly criticized in the sector. So within this presentation, I wanted to put this fact into detail and I'd like to show some opportunities for you in the future. So first of all, if we ask the question, what is hyper-casual? Hyper-casual is actually a business plan. It is like a, as you know, free-to-play is a business model. So, in these games, you buy something and you get reward. So, hyper-casual games is similar to this. It is a business model. This model does not get a revenue from the advertisement resources. So its plan is limited and there are some games incorporated. These games are played while you're waiting for your bus, while using transportation, or we have a short time waiting for something in the waiting room. So these are the games that you play. So this business model is not like a game category, but it's like business model. So we need to look from this perspective. So what you do is a casual game, of course, but you do this casual game in the hyper-casual model. You can use the same methods in free-to-play modes, but the difference is that you have different business model. So as it is really easy for us to go fast in the hyper-casual games, we prefer this kind of business model. Why do we need this? It's because that this kind of games are very common throughout the game. So in order to be a player, you needed a console. Of course, you would need a computer, and of course you would need a game to be both. After these kind of games are really common, I think according to statistics, it was that more than 5 billions of mobile phones are present in the world, throughout the world. So in this way, it will be possible for you to create games for those who do not use mobile phones. It could be your 5 years old niece. It could be your mother of 50 years old, or your uncle, your elderly people. Of course, they will like to have fun. So our aim is to provide games for them to be played. So why do we sustain this? This mobility will go without any interruption. You know, it'll be, if it was 5 billion, that will be 6 billion, 7 billion. So everyone will be connected to each other with their mobile phones, and non-player audience will be also playing games. So we will have some people at our homes who will play. So the games should be in a simplicity that these people can also play. But this is a challenging, which is a very challenging one, especially when you start to create a game design documentation. The most important factor is that you need to choose a target audience to whom you will be teaching this. This is what we see in HyperCasual. In HyperCasual, you don't have any audience, because when you upload a game to the store, the game is labeled as 4+ game at a default level. So the game can be played by 4 years old of age and 20 years of old age. So the hesitations is like, you shouldn't be creating games for men. Women also should focus on that as well. And the game should be understandable for 5-year-old child, also for elderly people as well, which creates a challenging for you. So as you know, if you take a look at this, normally all of HyperCasual games are using daily elements. You know, Coffee Steak is one of the games that I see recently. Coffee Steak is just about coffee. Coffee is very common daily thing, daily object. Everyone will know this. So as long as you expand the audience, then the target audience who will consume your games will be more expanded. For the sustainability of the playability, you know, the loyalty of the game can also be maintained easily thanks to this.
It's understanding the game in 5 seconds. In HyperCasual, the production is realized as follows. You make a quick prototype and you advertise it. You test the CPI and the retention. That's the process. I will go in detail later. In 5 seconds, you should be able to tell the game, because the ads vary between 5 to 7 seconds. So the player, when they first see it, there should be any learning time. They should say, yes, I should roll this ball here, or I should throw this ball in this game. So they should get the sensation with the first visual. For that, you should have simple narration. You should have simple descriptions, and the visual refeed should be really strong. That should be the game you should design. This is really difficult and tiring, particularly in mobile. The input, the data input is only a touch. You touch and you leave it. That's the metaphor we make. It's not the metaphor, but it should the touch, you leave it, or you slice something. So you cannot diversify the things you offer. So the material is low in amount, and you should do different things, and you should tell this to people in the best way. The main mechanic in perfect flow. In HyperCasual, we develop games really quickly, but our main mechanic should be perfect. That's why we use the word perfect. It should be really easy. It should have high playability. It should give a good feeling to the player. So that's the main mechanic we desire. The main reason here is that the player realizes it. The HyperCasual trend is there for like 3 years. It's a trend. Maybe we can say 4 years, but 2 years, but that's an average number that I am given. So we have a 3 years of HyperCasual business model, and it showed huge improve, and the players react to it. The games from 2009 and 2010 did not have smooth mechanics, but today when we look at it, for instance, I can give the example of Aerofest. It is so easy to play, and the arrows, the motions, the passing in the doors are so smooth and so good in flow. So, as someone who has software background, you can envy it. So it's really difficult for a developer. Of course, everyone knows the mechanic, touch, leave, and drop, but feeling that nerves, feeling those nerves, feeling the touch of the player is really difficult. So the main mechanic, core mechanic, and the number of inputs being low in mobile lead to us being more relaxed in developing the flow, developing the core mechanics. So you should make it really smooth. And this is among the challenges of HyperCasual. Stage designs that are deep but not complex. As I said, there should be 10 minutes of playtime in HyperCasual. And we call this success on average. And for that, you need a really good stage design. And the mechanic that is recursive in the core loop should not be boring. You should make the player play for 10, 100 or 150 stages. So the level design, the stage design should be in accordance with this. After 50, 60 levels, the players are bored. You see that. And to prevent it, it is really difficult. Professionally, level design is needed. And when I say professional level design, what I mean is the following. The level should not be in form of a puzzle. It should not be too challenging because the player is bored, because they will play for 10 minutes when they're waiting for the bus. If they are still struggling with it when the bus arrives, you will be bored. So you should make the levels deep, but you should say that I offered you something different, but you can solve it. That's the thing you wanted to make them say. So you should give that difference, you should give that authenticity, but you should not lose the player. So that's the challenge of HyperCasual. Of course, HyperCasual does not only have challenges, but it has different ones. It is difficult to do. It's a difficult industry. You should be quick in making prototypes, but at the same time, it gives great advantages to your studio. Quick prototyping. Mostly when we are talking about this, we say we make the game in a couple of weeks and we make great profit. No, you cannot make games in several weeks. You make prototypes in several weeks, in a couple of weeks. So there is a thin line between the two. In HyperCasual, you can make games in 2 weeks. Of course, it depends on the pipeline of each business, but the average is 2 weeks. There are those who make in 1 or 3 weeks, but we can say a developer, a designer can make a prototype in 2 weeks that could be tested. This quick prototyping provides great advantages with you, because when you look at the HyperCasual area, to release a game or to make the pre-tests, you need 3-6 months. Of course, these all have financial output. The cost of 6 months and 2 weeks are not, of course, different, are not, of course, the same. When you prototype a game for 2 weeks, you can test it in HyperCasual. And you can see if it promises any future or it promises any financial profit, or it has any reception from the part of the player. You can tell it in the end of 2 weeks with a test of 3-5 days. So you can foresee what could happen. CPI and retention tests. So getting the player and keeping it loyal. These are the tests to see the two. If a player is costing, for instance, you say a player has a cost and you make an advertisement of $100 and you reached 1,000 players. So we have a 10% of getting a player cost. With the other benefits, you try to keep the player. You can see how many times, how many hours the player played in the first day and the second and the third. In HyperCasual, 1 day retention and 7 day retention are the important parameters. And the acceptable values here, and of course, these are average rates, average values. These are given to just give you an idea. So 1 day retention, if it is between 40-45%, and for the 7th day retention, 15% are the success rates in average. Most of the publishers name 30 cents of CPI and they consider it success. Of course, this will give you the chance to test more games, because when you make a casual game, it takes 3-6 months of testing process. And in casual, 7th day retention is not, of course, not important, because you look at the 3rd, 5th, and 60th day retention. We look at the player loyalty. So the difference here is about prototyping in 2 weeks and testing in 5 days. But when you make a casual game, in the best case, you should test it in every 3 months. You should make a prototype in every 3 months, and you should test it for a month. And the tests, of course, have some cost as well, because you make advertising of $1,000, $3,000, $10,000, and of course they return as cost every day. So a serious drop in the cost we see in HyperCasual, and that's the advantage of the HyperCasual. And the biggest advantage of the model is this: early results. I mentioned this because you get the result really early on. In the 5th day, you say there is light at the end of the tunnel. Let's continue testing. And on the 7th day, when you learn about the 7th day retention, you say either we can make the soft launch or let's drop because it will be costly. And you go on with another game. So that's the point you get in this on the 5th day. So the decision taking is one of the most problematic part, because regardless of the game you make, you will of course want to continue or quit. So that day will arrive. So it's a quick process and it is based on metrics. It's based on statistical data. That's the result you get. So you don't have to take emotional decisions. And that's the biggest disadvantage of hyper-casual, because you always kill something you put efforts before. This becomes 3-5 games. You like ideas, you like some potential of some games, but then you have to drop. You make additions, but then after you receive the metrics, you see the player did not find it relatable, and you kill it because you believe in that metric because it's scientific. It's a real data. So you have the emotional connection there, and this is the great handicap, but of course it is a great advantage as well. Team coordination. This is to prepare you for the future. You start to form your team in hyper-casual, and you test this team in very hard conditions. The most important part of a studio is the team. It is among the most important values of a studio. Your team's quality, your team's desire to run to a victory with you, lead you to success. Regardless of your enthusiasm, if your team is not pushing you, you cannot get there. In hyper-casual, that's what we see. Our team in hyper-casual is continuing it, but at Fever Games, we have casual projects as well. We did some in the past as well, and we will continue to do so. Your team's development, improvement, and your choices on running this marathon together with some of them and doing some sprints with some depend on this know-how, so that you get this know-how in hyper-casual. You get to know to your team, and the team improves in it as well. So killing the games, the thing that I just mentioned before, and losing that emotional connection can be overlooked with your loyalty to the team. And in long-term projects, you can work better and easily with this infrastructure. Because in long-term projects, because I have been into some before, and there were projects that would last for years, you see one fact. You can see some certain scenarios after 3-6 months. Let's finish this. We are fed up with it. So that could be the point you get after some time. So the team motivation, coordination, and similar topics like cohesion, chemistry, them being prepared for a marathon are really important. And you can do so in hyper-casual. You can create your team. And this is one of the biggest advantages it offers. Hyper-casual has technological advantages for the studio as well. You make an incredible set of assets. Fever Games have been in hyper-casual for 2 years now. Of course, the first year had some, particularly 2019 and 2020, had hyper-casual firms using asset store. They were fed by asset store. But after some time, when the market expanded, similar works have been put forward, and everyone switched to custom. So they would develop genuine assets. And we do the same. we created series character models, and with them being improved, there were problems with animations because they required custom special animations. And we started to standardize our rigs. And when we standardize our risks, our animations turned into some packages. So when you look from that perspective, we created a good set of characters, and each one of them were created in Fiber games. They had animations in Fiber games. And you have environments occurring. There were different styles and genres of characters, and you see different landscaping in different themes. Of course, we created our own archive. And when we created this archive, we had a good asset archive. Of course, it's not an asset store, but in future, when we start a project, we have trees, stones, cars, or other objects ready beforehand. And we can get like 50, 60 cars out of the archive. Or let's say you need a character and you have that character prepared beforehand, like male, female, children, youngsters. You have tens of examples in your archive. And this helps me create games in different genres. It provides me with a prepared library when I'm creating games. And this is serious advantage, both in terms of time and money. Forming an infrastructure. When we started doing HyperCasual, we were small in team. Our team was not as large. And we could make the operation simply because you were 3-5 people. You would say, you do this, and you could continue like that. However, after some time, after the team is expanded and the assets and the projects are more in number, you need an infrastructure. For task management, you need an infrastructure, and you should do this primarily because that's what happened to us. We first did the task management, then we made a system for asset management. We formed a library and people had to easily access it, and people could easily browse through it, go through it, and they should be able to get small directions to get what they need. So we formed the wiki, and after some time, the number of games were more, and we wanted to make a repository of games. All of these get you to make bigger projects. It gets you ready with some infrastructure in your company. This technological infrastructure, of course, is prepared in time. So you should spare some time to it. You should spare some serious energy. And of course, there is some financial cost of it, but you expand it over time. In casual projects for 2022, we will be prepared in terms of technological infrastructure. When I first started, I need to do that and I need to do this will not be the questions I will ask because I will have the infrastructure ready in advance. Quick project plan making, let's say. We are working in an agile system and it helps your limbs. When you are developing games in 2-week sprints, one way or the other, your developers or your designers adaptate to it and they create their own small libraries and people adaptate to it. When you want to make a casual game for a year, let's say, and you put the plan there, of course you divide it into sprints and your team adapt to your sprints because they are always working with sprints. They are ready for it. They make 2 weeks of sprints for HyperCasual. Of course, it was one project, but this time the only thing that would change would be they would be making small sprints of a larger and a longer term project. So the limbs of your team being improved is a great advantage for you. Of course, HyperCasual has an essential, and it's the financial advantages. Since it's a business model, it has the largest advantages in financial means. In the financial part, when you look at it, you see it is low production costs. And I'm talking about the prototypes. I'm not talking about the game production costs, because as I said, we are creating prototypes in 2 weeks, but if you are talking about a soft launch, it should be a crunch period of a month and a half, and you should be for having nights without sleep.
And of course, there's a great effort in that process as well. And then the product is launched, but you continue supporting them. The designs are still ongoing. New themes are added, new costumes are added. So there is a continuation. The process is not done yet. So there is a team working on that. That's for sure. So if your peak is small, you eventually try to create a team that will work on that. Of course, the production costs are really low, especially in Turkey. There's a cost for the prototype production, and of course, I'm speaking out of the Fiverr games. It's the average cost is $2,000. But if you look at Europe or Russia, it's about $8,000 or $10,000. As the production costs in Turkey are low, Turkey is the best place to manifest this production. That's why Turkey dominated the markets. Not talking based on a big data, but like 17% of them are coming from Turkey, approximately. So we have a lot of costs, and if you are working with the publisher, considering that the advertisement costs are allocated by you, you can try your chance with certain prototype. If you want to create a casual game, then you will need 3 months, especially considering the exchange rate of Turkish lira. I think you cannot do it under $3,000 or $40,000. Investment is actually easy to be obtained. So this is decision to sustain it or kill it is really easy to take. Of course, return will also be accordingly fast. If you can be successful after your first game, then the second game will be more successful, and then we got more return, which will be appealing for the investors. And in HyperCasual games, it's really easy to get investments. So because, at the end of the day, from this point of view of the investor, that investor will think about return. They will look at the data, the chances of being successful, and then, of course, there are many statistical data. If you like to create an indie game or casual game, you are trying to invest a period of 1 year. So what the investor thinks is that, yes, okay, we need that certain amount of money. Then when we will see the return of this, it's about 1 year. And of course, this is not something that appeals investors. Of course, in casual games, there are investments they receive. That's for sure. But in hyper casual games, it is easier for you to get investments. Of course, it depends on the money you can invest, $1 million and $1,000 or $2,000. So from that standpoint, it'll be easier. So as I said, finding an investment is really not that hard. After you find the investor, when you get the investor, new investor might be found, and it'll be easier for you if you are transferring from mobile phone to PC platform. Then it will be easier for you to find another investor. There'll be more positive backgrounds for you because you have an example of being successful, and then you can show them so that you can get another investor. Then you have team after one successful project. There is a reality behind you. So this is another one of the topics that is appealing for investor. Of course, the financing resources of the publishers is also important for you, and also it's an advantage because when you are working with the publisher, they test it. There is a partnership between you and them according to business model of yours, and here publisher is also in the game, and they can cover the production costs. Some of the production costs, it might be 1, 2, or 5. It depends on your business model, but some of them are covered by the publisher. If you have an exclusive agreement, if there's a commitment between you and them, this commitment might be, you can say that 8 prototype might be tested, or let's say that I can produce 8 prototypes or 6 prototypes per month. You can say this, and publisher can say, okay, we are waiting for 8 prototypes per month, and we will pay this amount of money for each prototype. That's how it is. So there is a share of risks. So you are sharing the risks. Of course, this is a partnership. This is a cooperation between you and them. And for sure, when you are establishing a studio, it is really important that the production costs are covered, like at least some of them, and it creates advantage for you. Here, publishers are looking at these chances with a positive manner, and you can easily be in contact with the publisher easily. There are some local publishers, Rolik. It's a company which you can go and get in contact. You can make a phone call with them, so you can remove any problems, language-related problems, if you have any. Many foreign publishers started to establish their offices in Turkey, their headquarters, and as one of the biggest publishers, we prefer to work with Rolik as Fiber Games, and that know-how there created a value for us. Especially speaking Turkish is also an advantage. Despite your level of English, you hold ideation meetings. I can give an example. So I can say different language-related nuances or some adverbs that is unique to Turkish language, which is hard to interpret and translate into other languages, but you can use them thanks to the language thanks to the removal of the language barrier. So it is really great that you have a company beside you that can understand you. So what is waiting for us in the future? This is another interesting point, because 2019, 2020, or 2021, and now we're going toward 2022. Day by day, quality in hyper-casual games are increasing day by day, both at organization level, both at developmental level. The bar got higher. You know, in past, there used to be tree cutting games. Now, without any level deafness, a little bit hypnotic, takes you and mesmerizes you. But then these were the games that get you bored of, and then the quality increased. Now there's a definition of hybrid casual. I don't want to use that concept, but because, you know, it is not a definition that is for casual games. It's a concept derived from the community itself, but with new genres, with new sub features, that simple games started to be growing in terms of its quality, their quality. So then new fake multiplayer games started to emerge, and then fake IO games started to be visible, in which you challenge with certain groups, also in which you play with the AI. So the evolution is still ongoing. You have seen the examples in Apple stores, hyper-casual games, different subgenres, different new types of games are derived, and we started to define them with the definition of hybrid casual games. The visual quality has also improved itself with the advancement of the sector and the devices both. The visuals are more advanced, and the depthness of the games are getting more and more too. The level depths are getting more deep, and complicated levels are starting to be used. You know, you can think of a soldier Vulcan, but you know, the weapons in arms can be changed, and the selection of wars, battles are being various. So the layers in the level design is getting various and various. So these are the new expectations of non-players. Real multiplayer instead of the fake ones. This is one of my expectations in the next year. It is not told only by me, but many people. So, but I'm expecting that real multiplayer games will be released in the casual hyper game. New hybrid casual games will also be visible with new types of games. As I said, there are new games from Rolik or Hududa. Many games are released in idle genre, but in hyper-casual models. I think new examples will come in the next year ahead of us. FPS games are also popular, but you know, as I said earlier, FPS games are not preferred to keep that audience of many profiles, as I said, but new games are started to be tested that can appeal attention of women. I don't see an example, but I think in new year we will see some examples. New genres will come with new certain game types. This is my prediction. And this was my last slide. I would like to thank everyone for your attention. Thank you very much. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for participation. We have 3 questions. Let me ask them one by one. You know the situation of the exchange rates. Don't you think it's really more logical that we can resort to the publishers in abroad? Yeah, of course, HyperCasual games are spending dollars and receives dollars. I would like to answer this question out of the fiber games. So dollar is the currency used in this sector, and the salaries are in dollars, so that we don't have any struggle with the inflation. So instead of a raise based on the inflation, they prefer to pay the salaries in dollars. So if you're spending dollars, you can have your demands in dollars. That's the logic. I don't know its representation in the side of the Rolex. I'm trying to associate it with the production one. I don't want to go in detail in other sectors, but you know, if your revenue is dollar, then your production might be in dollar, and you can talk to them using dollars. Our second question: what might be the logical monthly payment while contracting with the publisher? Do you think can you give an example of calculation based on the prototype experience or another type of calculation? Yes, of course. I'm not a person with that side, with the publisher side. I'm just speaking hypothetical. So they give a code to you, they create a cost. They hold meetings with you. They give an ideas for you. They have a responsibility for you. But creating less than 6 prototypes in a month would mean that you're not enough for them. 2 or 3 prototypes will not be appealing for the publishers. So they might tell you you should increase your production. And also, what you will speak with them clearly is your production costs. This is the amount of money per production, and I would like to have your support clearly, so you can speak clearly with them. And our last question: do you think there was an increase in the minimum in the number of the minimum teams for the introduction of the HyperCasual sector recently? Yes, there has been. Let me give an example. We started with a few team members. I think this was told also of Mr. Sinan, and then we started to improve ourselves. So let me compare it with the previous year. Most of the studios have their own developer and a designer. They create one prototype in a week, let's say. That designer will be like a game designer, and developer will be like more like into the level designer. This is how it went. They went in this process. But now we have a team of 3 people in the game design level, and we have to come up with new ideas all the time. I will leave design. Our team is different for animations. 3D artists are a separated group, and our developers are different. So we used to do this with 2 teams, but now we have more than 4 teams, and we cannot do it again either. So we cannot test the playtime of the game with a few people. So sometimes you can put the game into the trash just because you cannot test it. So therefore, you will need a team organization. Of course, 1 or 2 people can eventually test it. Maybe they can be successful. But if you don't have any game designer, if you don't have any designers, if you don't have any good developer or artists, what I mean by artists, it's like artists who have knowledge about scenes, lighting, Unity, then we can say that this path is really difficult one. Or you can handle it as well as a boss. So you should fill that gap, or you have to create these teams. Thank you very much for your participation, Mr. Khan, for your insightful ideas. See you. Good day.